Okay, so in this video we'll try to find out incidence of indirect tax. The meaning already we have explained in another video, but still we'll try to mention the meaning. Incidence of indirect tax meaning is nothing but a tax burden on consumer and on producer. Fine. Our last video was about incidence of indirect tax meaning plus in case of demand is elastic, and in this video we'll try to mention incidence of indirect tax in case of demand is inelastic. So let's start. Incidence of indirect tax if demand is inelastic. Fine. Okay, so if demand is inelastic, we will draw a steeper demand curve. Now let's draw here. 0 initial, and x-axis is the quantity, y-axis we will mention here price in dollar. Okay, and the demand curve sorry, and the demand curve we will draw here steeper because demand is inelastic. So this is the flatter, and little bit like this will be the steeper demand curve. So let's draw here. Okay, this is the steeper demand curve, and supply curve as usual we'll draw a normal supply curve SS. We got a equilibrium point here E, and equilibrium quantity is Q, equilibrium price is P. So we will give here some value, say example 10, and here also 10. So this situation we have before tax. So here we'll mention before tax. What is the situation here? First situation is SS is normal supply curve, normal supply curve, and second point DD, that is demand curve. So but it is a steeper demand curve. DD is steeper demand curve. Okay, that initial, this is the initial stage, okay, before tax. Third number is our equilibrium point, and fourth will have 0Q is initial quantity, and fifth point 0P is initial price. So this is the situation we have before tax. Now after tax, what happened? When the government imposed tax, supply curve will shift to the left, producer will supply less. So let's see here, after tax the supply curve shifted to left. So we have S1 and S1. So this is the new supply curve after tax. We got new equilibrium point E1, okay, and parallelly we'll get a new equilibrium quantity Q1. So here okay, we got a here new equilibrium quantity Q1. We'll give some value here, say example 8, and we got a new price here, say P1. We give a value, say here 13, or maybe 13 will give, okay, P1. And we got another price at this particular point where it's intersecting the supply curve, initial supply curve here. Okay, so this point is here. We'll give here P2 and we'll give the value 11. Here price has increased, here price has decreased. Okay, so after tax we'll try to find out. We'll give here some name, say E1, F and G. Okay, so what is the situation after tax? After tax, supply curve shifted to left. So we have a new supply curve S1, S1, new supply curve. Okay, first point. Second point, we have new equilibrium point E1, new equilibrium point. This particular point, we have a new equilibrium quantity 0q1. 0q1 is new equilibrium quantity, and 0p1 0p1 new equilibrium price, and 0p2 another price. So this is the situation after tax, and the above situation is before tax. So you can see here the portion P2, G, F and P. It's quite lesser portion. Say here, okay, this part is the producer and top part is always consumer. So we'll try to differentiate with the help of some dotted lines, dotted, dot. Okay, and here we'll give like this, so that you can differentiate. So here easily you can differentiate here. Consumer is paying high tax and producer is paying low tax if demand is inelastic. Fine. So the portion P2, G, F and P, okay, the tax paid by producer, and P, F, E1 and P1, the tax paid by consumer. So there will be more tax burden on consumer and less tax burden on producer if demand is inelastic, if demand is steeper. So how much? Let's find out. Okay, so we'll try to take this particular gap and put it here. So tax burden on producer is quite less. It is P2 GFP producer, that is P2 GFP, P2 GF and P. So this is the tax burden on producer, and tax burden on consumer, we'll mention here tax burden on consumer. Okay, tax burden on consumer is okay, we have P, F, E1, P1. So P, F, E1 and P1. So you can find out there is a more tax burden on consumer and less tax burden on producer if demand is inelastic or steeper. But how much? We'll figure it out. Okay, now how much tax burden on producer? Okay, so which is the producer part? This P and P2. This is the producer part. So our formula will be P minus P2. P minus P2 into Q1, right? Q1. So we have how much? The value of P is 10. Okay, so here we have done one mistake. Remember, the price has decreased. It should be 9. It should not be 11. So P we have 10 and P2 it should be 9, not 11, because price has decreased. So it should be 9, and quantity we have Q1 8. So 1 into 8 is 8. Fine. So tax burden is how much on producer? 8. And we'll find out, figure it out how much tax burden on consumer. So we'll be having P1 minus P. So next we will be having tax burden on consumer. Fine. So tax burden on consumer is how much? P1 minus P. So P1 minus P into this particular quantity Q1. So how much P1 value? We have 13 minus P is 10 into Q1 we have, this is Q1, okay? Q1 we have 8. So we got 13 minus 10, 3 into 8. Or 3 8 ja? Okay, 24. So who is paying high tax? If demand is inelastic, okay, the more tax burden will be on consumer and less tax burden will be on producer. We'll find out the total tax paid by consumer and producer together. Fine. So total tax paid by consumer and producer together, okay? So what is the consumer area on the top? P1, okay, minus the last total P2 and into Q1, how much P1 value? 13 minus how much P2 value? 9, okay, into Q1 we have 8. So 13 minus 9 how much? It will be 4 I think, into 8, right? 8, and it will be 32. So now let's add this 8 and 24. Okay, you will get 32. 8, 4, 2 and 2, yeah, 32. So if you will add this producer plus consumer, you will get the total 32, and we got here total how much? 32. So remember, it's a very important, if demand is inelastic, okay, and if demand is steeper, it's same thing, okay. If demand is steeper or inelastic, remember there will be more tax burden on consumer, okay, there will be more tax burden on consumer and less tax burden will be on producer, and total tax also we have found out 32. So this is about incidence of indirect tax if demand is inelastic. So in our last video already we have mentioned in if demand will be elastic like this, okay, so the case will be opposite. Fine. If demand is elastic, the case will be opposite. I am repeating, the case will be opposite. Why? Because our demand is flatter demand curve, okay. Okay, fine. So we'll finish it here only, and in our next video we'll try to mention if supply is elastic and if supply is inelastic, then who will be paying more tax, who will be paying less tax. So in our next video.